Hey there, and welcome to DIY Projects with Pete. In today's episode, we'll be building some basic cabinets so you can organize your laundry room, and then we'll go over the process of hanging them. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Let's go ahead and get started with today's video. I want to give a big shout out to Maytag for sponsoring today's video. The washer and dryer work great and have all sorts of settings to make sure your stuff gets cleaned efficiently. Plus, they're super quiet. Definitely check them out if you're in the market for some new appliances. The first step is to make the side panels, the top, bottom, and back for your upper cabinet by cutting a plywood sheet down to size on a table saw. You can find the materials list and cut list at DIYPete.com/upper cabinets. I used a miter saw to cut the panels down to the correct length. The cabinet in this video is a pretty standard size and is 30 inches in width, but it can be modified pretty easily to best fit your space. The panels are connected using pocket holes, which makes the carcass go together rather quickly. Set a pocket hole jig for 3/4 inch stock and put 4 holes on the ends of each horizontal board. Use 1 1/4 inch long screws and wood glue to attach the boards to each other. Clamps are going to be helpful for this project to ensure things go together nice and square. I attached the top board first, and then those pocket holes are going to face the ceiling so you'll never see them. Next, you'll want to attach the lower panel to create the cabinet floor. This should be spaced up a little less than 1.5 inches so that the face frame we'll be putting on later matches up closely with it but has a slight lip. We'll cut the back panel out of 3/4 inch thick plywood and then do a test fit to make sure it's nice and snug. Then drill pocket holes around the perimeter of the back panel. I'd recommend 4 to 5 pocket holes per side. We'll then attach the panel using 1 1/4 inch long screws. Use a clamp to hold it in place, and you can tap the back piece to adjust it as you need to. Work your way around the perimeter until it's secured on all sides. I cut a spacer block to 8 inches and then used a shelf pin jig to make the pinholes so we can have adjustable shelves. You'll need to do this on the front and back of each side. Go ahead and cut a shelf out of plywood, put in the pins, and then test fit the shelf. We'll add banding a little later to cover the front of the exposed plywood. Now we'll move on to building the face frame of the cabinet. We'll cut 4 pieces of 1.5 inch wide by 3/4 inch thick wood. Next, drill 2 pocket holes on the end of each horizontal board. Give it a quick sanding, and then begin attaching each board with screws and glue. A face clamp's going to help hold the boards together flush. Take your time with the process and continue around all 4 corners. Once this is done, we'll get ready to attach the face frame to the front side. Add some glue to the front and then put the face frame in place. The face frame will be flush with the top panel. It's going to overhang each side panel on the outside and inside by 1/4 inch, and then the bottom will extend below the cabinet floor and will be flush with the bottom of each side panel. I attached it using an 18 gauge brad nailer with 1 1/4 inch long nails. The next step is to start building the doors. Each door will consist of 2 vertical stiles and 2 horizontal boards called rails. The door front will be a 1/4 inch thick piece of plywood that will slide into the groove. We'll cut a groove on one side of all rails and stiles using a 1/4 inch slot cutter bit on a router table. Now, if you don't have a router table, I'd recommend looking on YouTube for other examples of how to build doors. We'll cut a tongue on the end of each rail with another bit, and you can clean it up with a razor blade if needed. I made the front door out of 1/4 inch thick plywood. Glue was added into the slots and on the tongues right before sliding the plywood into place. I then put the last rail in place, clamped the doors, and wiped up excess glue. Here I'm pre-drilling the holes for the cabinet pipe handles. I made a jig to help line up the holes with the handles. I used a door hinge jig and set it for 1 1/4 inch door overlay hinges to make the hinge holes. Having a jig makes this process so much easier than if you don't have one. I then test fit the doors just to double check that they fit before painting them. Fill the nail holes with wood putty and then sand the doors and face frame to prepare for painting. I'm building 2 identical cabinets today, and I'd already taped off the first one, but this shows me taping off the second cabinet, the inside of it prior to painting. Then start rolling on some paint. I rolled on quite a few thin coats of cabinet paint I picked up at the hardware store. The paint does dry pretty quickly, so you won't have to wait too long between coats. A brush works well for getting those harder to reach areas. Once you finish up with the painting, you can add the hinges and the handles. Go ahead and attach the doors to the cabinet, and then once they're in place, you can adjust them as needed. I added banding to the front edge of the shelf by ironing it on, and once that's in place, I used a razor blade to remove excess and then lightly sanded the edges before putting it back into the cabinet. Hanging the cabinets is a piece of cake and something any DIYer can tackle. First, you'll want to find and mark where the studs are in the wall. Then determine the height you'd like them at. I measured up 54 inches from the ground, which is pretty typical, and then attached and leveled a straight edge to the wall. Then just lift the cabinet onto the board and use a few screws to secure them to the studs. You can always shim the cabinet a bit if you need to. I wanted a little extra storage, so I added one more cabinet right next to the first. Once up, you can remove that board underneath, add some spackle to those screw holes, and that's all there is to it. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this project inspires you to go out and build something and that you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and cheers from Montana. What do you think of the new cabinets, huh? You like them? Oh yeah.